October is the month where the spirit world is closer to the veil. Moses felt the crisp nights, and with the changing position of the sun, he knew it was time to leave the ruins of his cabin and venture out into the world. He gathered some sticks and formed a frame for his scarecrow body. He joined with the sticks and hobbled to a nearby farm. The fields were full of farmers bringing in the harvest, but none of them noticed the sticks moving across the fields. Moses went to the Campbell farm and hid behind the barn as Mrs. Campbell was hanging out clothes on the line. He spotted some overalls that would fit him. So when Mrs. Campbell went back into the house, he took the overalls and pulled them on over the sticks. He stood in the Campbell's vegetable garden for the rest of the day and waited until dark. Moses was excited, for he had seen a group of children who had hiked across the fields a few weeks earlier and actually stopped and explored the ruins of his old cabin. He noticed a little girl with a beautiful lavender aura and heard the other children call her Molly. He wanted to meet Molly. He felt she could be a friend. That night, Moses left the Campbell's garden and hobbled through the fields almost a mile to the farmhouse where he thought Molly lived. He hid behind their outbuilding the rest of the night. At dawn, the farmhouse came alive and family members were coming and going through the side door. The father left for work, and two older boys were picked up by friends. Soon after, an older lady came out of the house and hung laundry out on the clothesline. Moses ducked behind the building when she stopped what she was doing and looked his way. She finished her work and went into the house. When he thought it was safe, he bravely went to the clothesline and took a shirt. He quickly hobbled back to his hiding place and put the shirt on under his overalls. He was almost presentable. That afternoon, Moses watched as Molly, her sisters, and some friends carved pumpkins on the picnic table just a few yards from his hiding place. He noticed that Molly's pumpkin had round eyes, just perfect for his spectacles, so after dark he hobbled back to his cabin, dug through the rubble, and found two small bottles that would make perfect spectacles. He put them in his pockets and hobbled back to Molly's house. When Moses got to Molly's, he quietly crept over to the carved pumpkins and inserted his bottles into the round eye holes of Molly's pumpkin. He lifted the pumpkin and placed it on the top of his sticks. "Now I'm presentable," he said to himself. The next morning, Moses waited in the back of the house until he could build up the nerve to knock on the door. He gathered up his courage, hobbled to the door, straightened his pumpkin head, and knocked. A lady answered the door and screamed. His heart sank. He thought he looked presentable. He turned to hobble away when an older lady came to the door. She called him back. Moses could tell when he looked into her eyes that she understood him. "Is Molly home?" Moses asked. "I'm Molly. Is that my pumpkin on your head?" she answered as she peeked around her grandmother. "Yes, I hope you don't mind. Is this a joke, Grandma?" You see, Molly inherited the ability to see into the spirit world, as did her younger sister Mary. No one else in Molly's family of 7 possessed the gifts. Molly's grandmother had the gift and was only staying with the family for a few days, and the day Moses arrived was the day her grandmother was going back to her own home. "No, Molly, this is a spirit of a young boy who is using the scarecrow to communicate with us. What's your name?" "My name is Moses. I live back there," he said as he raised his shirt sleeve and pointed to the woods way back on the other side of the field behind Molly's house. "I saw some children walk by my cabin a while back. I heard them call you Molly, and I could see an aura around you. It showed me you could be trusted, and I'm looking for a friend." "Well, Molly, I can tell he's sweet, but he is a very sad spirit. It took a lot for him to come to the door. Do you want a little friend?" "I'm not little. My dad told me I had to be the man of the house when he was out working. I just turned 10. "And where will he stay?" Molly asked Grandma. "I'll stay in the garden. I've been there for a while, waiting for a head. I got my pants from the farm over there, and I got my shirt from your clothesline. I won't move when other people are over here," Moses said. "I'm a good person." "Well, Molly, it looks like you have a new friend," Grandma said. Over the next few days, he became a good friend to Molly and Mary. Since the others in the family only thought of Moses as a scarecrow, they usually ignored him. Molly's mother understood the girls' gifts and allowed them to spend time with their little friend. One afternoon, the girls were finishing up their homework on the picnic table and keeping Moses company. A neighbor came by to visit their mother. She saw Moses and said, "Your little scarecrow is pretty cute. I've never seen one with bottles for eyes." "That's because he needs glasses," Molly said. "What a good idea. Well, your mom is waiting for me. Bye, Mrs. Charlin." "Now, how did you know I needed spectacles?" Moses asked. "I just guessed." "Where did you get those bottles?" "We have a bunch of old bottles in a trash pit at my house. I can't find my spectacles. I think they buried me with them." "Oh," Mary said, looking concerned. "My whole family is in Campbell Cemetery." "What happened to your family?" Molly asked. "My mom died while she was having my baby sister. I remember because it was horrible. I loved my mom, and she was so still and pale. Dad put the baby next to her on the bed. The baby cried for a little while, and then it was still too. My dad wouldn't eat anything. All he did was cry and hug Mom. It was winter time, and the snow was deep. He told me to keep the fire going in the wood stove. The next day, he went to the barn and hooked up the horses to the wagon, and they trudged through the snow to the Campbell farm to get some wood to make a coffin. He looked really sick. He didn't have any gloves or a hat. When he got back with the wood, he didn't even come in to get warm. He stayed out in the barn all day making the coffin. I had boiled some potatoes for him, but when he finally came in, he said he was too tired to eat. He went in the bedroom and laid down by Mom and fell asleep. It had started snowing again, and the wind was howling through the cracks in the walls. I peeked in the bedroom and asked Dad if he was hungry. He told me he couldn't eat and to get them another blanket because they were freezing. I could tell Dad had a bad fever. He coughed, and then he asked me to feed the cow and the horses. I told him I would take care of everything for him. I took a lantern out to the barn and fed the animals. I didn't have any mittens and my hands were freezing. My coat was too thin and I had a hole in my shoe. I figured I better get back to the house as soon as I could. I pushed and pushed on the barn door to get it open, but there was a snowdrift building up in front of the door. I cracked the door open just enough to squeeze out. I closed the door and trudged through the snow. The wind and the snow felt like needles sticking into my face and hands. I finally made it to the porch. I had stacked some wood on the porch earlier in the day. I was freezing, so all I could carry was a couple of pieces of wood, and those were covered with snow. The fire had gone out in the stove. I tried to start a new one, but my hands were frozen stiff, and I was out of kindling. I thought if I wrapped up in a blanket, I could keep myself warm. I fell asleep on the floor by the stove. That's all I remember until the next day when the Campbells came by to check on us. I could see myself lying on the floor, wrapped up in the blanket. The men came in and touched my head and said I was frozen. They went in the back room and said my dad was dead. I ran in Mom and Dad's bedroom and saw Dad hugging Mom and the baby, and they were all dead. I didn't understand why the men wouldn't talk to me. I promised my Mom and Dad I would do a better job. I told them I will be the man of the house, and I will take care of everything. I told them not to worry, and I laid down next to them. Molly could tell that Moses was crying. The Campbells picked up my body off the floor and placed me in the bed by my family. I heard them say that we would be fine until they could get the undertaker to come out. They said we would have a good Christian burial in their cemetery in a fine place near a young cedar tree. The tree is still there." The girls didn't know what to say. Just a few seconds after Moses told his story, Molly's older brother Nathan came out of the house. He walked over to the girls and Moses and said, "What a stupid-looking scarecrow. He could never scarecrow away." Nathan looked closer and yelled, "Why is it wearing my good shirt?" He ripped the shirt off of Moses and knocked him to the ground. "Stop it," Molly cried as she pushed Nathan. He lost his balance and fell to the ground. Molly's mother saw what happened from the kitchen window, and she ran outside. She helped Molly pick up Moses, and she told Nathan to get in the house. "That thing was wearing my shirt," he yelled. "Just go inside. I'll wash it. I'll take care of everything." "Mom, he hurt Moses. I can tell Moses is upset." "I'll run in and get another shirt. Don't worry, Moses. Everything will be all right," Mom said, even though she couldn't see him. All she could see was the sticks and the clothes and the pumpkin head. They fixed the sticks and the overalls, and they put his head back on. Molly's mom ran in the house and soon came out with an old shirt that Nathan had grown out of. They dressed him back up and adjusted his bottles in the pumpkin head. It was getting close to Halloween, and the ghostly activity in the area was so strong that Molly's grandmother put a protective blessing around the house and property. Moses was safe from any evil spirits wandering around as long as he stayed inside the protective shield. But he was so upset, he hobbled out of the yard and across the protective shield and headed back to the ruins of his cabin. He knew that he only had 2 days to roam the countryside, for after midnight on Halloween, he would have to remain near the cabin for another year. He felt lonely at the cabin all by himself, so that night he decided to go back to Molly's garden. On his way through the field, he could see spirits trying to penetrate the protective shield around Molly's house. He felt an urgency to get to her house to help stand guard for the family. As Moses neared the protective shield around Molly's yard, he was attacked from behind by a huge, toad-like creature. It pushed him down and tore off his pumpkin head and stomped on it. Moses grabbed the head away from the creature and threw it across the protective shield. He hit the creature with his sticks. It screamed like a banshee and ran away. Moses drug all the scarecrow clothes and sticks into Molly's yard and put himself back together. He stood guard by the side door and watched the evil spirits as they attempted to break the shield. In the morning, Moses listened to all the commotion of a family waking up, talking at the breakfast table, and getting ready for school and work. Molly's father left for work, and her older brother Adam left for school. Soon the other 4 children ran out the door as the school bus could be heard in a distance. Molly was very happy to see that Moses was back, but she did notice that his head was pretty smashed in. She said, "I'm glad you're back, Moses. When I get home from school, we'll carve another pumpkin for your head. This one is pretty caved in. I'll stand guard for your mom until you get home from school. Bye." "Bye, Moses," the girls said as they ran for the school bus. After school, Molly and her mother carved another pumpkin head for Moses. They threw the old head in the garden and placed the bottles inside for his glasses, and they placed it on top of his sticks for his head. Moses was quite proud of his new head. Halloween night came, and Molly and her family had been planning what they would do if the protective shield no longer worked. For Halloween night was a free-for-all for ghosts and other evil entities. Molly's dad had to go out of town on business, and her 2 older brothers and her older sister were sent to stay with friends or family. That left Molly, her little sister Mary, and her mother to deal with any demonic spirits that could cross the shield. They knew that whatever was after them would find them anywhere they went, so the plan was to stay home and face the evil. At the last minute, Molly's Aunt Veronica showed up to help. Moses had asked if he could come up on the porch, and of course it was fine for him to do so. When Aunt Veronica knocked on the door, he answered it first. "Hello, Moses. Nice to meet you," she said. "Oh, you can see me too," Moses said. "Yes, I can see ghosts too. And I'm here to help us all get through the night." Molly's mom had no special gifts, but with Aunt Veronica there, she, Molly, and Mary made 3 gifted ones. Moses didn't know what evil was bombarding the protective shield, but he did know that the family suspected very strong black magic was behind it. They suspected a powerful witch was pulling the strings. Moses had never encountered anything like what began to happen that Halloween night. At 11 o'clock, the shield disappeared, and the demonic bombardment began. Molly, Mary, her mom, and Aunt Veronica ran upstairs to watch the yard through the windows. A demon came in the side door. Moses screamed, and the demon pulled off his pumpkin head and threw it against the wall, smashing it into pieces. One of the fairies flew downstairs and pushed Moses into the living room and put him into a deep sleep. Moses blissfully dreamed on, having no idea of the specters and demons ravaging the house and terrifying Molly and her family. He never saw the power of the 2 little girls and their aunt to survive the attacks and fight the evil. Finally, it was midnight. Halloween was over, and they had vanquished the evil spirits. The house remained intact, and it was time to wake Moses. Molly ran downstairs and gently pushed on his shoulder. He slowly woke up and told Molly he had had the most wonderful dreams. She said, "Well, we had a nightmare. Come on outside. We have to restore the protective shield. It will take all of us to make it strong." Moses could tell that Molly was very shaken, so he did as she said. They went outside with the others, and they all held hands. Aunt Veronica chanted, and the girls concentrated, and soon a beautiful, sparkling dome came over the property. It sparkled brilliantly for a few seconds, and then became invisible. He turned to Molly and said, "Well, it's time for me to go home. I have to tend to the fire to keep my family warm. I promised my dad I would." "Wait," Molly said. Molly went in their outbuilding and came out with a large fishbowl. "How about this? There's no place for your glasses." "I like it," he said, as he placed it over his head. Molly could see his head through the glass. "I have to go now. I'll be back next year if I can." "Maybe sometime we can go back to your cabin and go fishing or something," Molly said. "I'll always be back there. Bye." Molly and Mary hugged the scarecrow, and he turned and hobbled across the yard. Molly ran upstairs and looked out the window. She watched Moses as he hobbled across the field. A ways out, he turned and waved. She waved back with a tear in her eye. Weeks went by, and Moses kept the fire going at the cabin. One cold, snowy morning, Moses saw a car driving down the field road, heading toward his cabin. Moses had no idea that Molly's great-aunt Ludmilla had come from the old country to help Molly and her family to identify and rid themselves of a horrendous witch and to stop a raging fairy war. Her first quest was to rescue the local spirits and send them on their way. Molly's grandmother had written to her sister about Moses, so she was determined to help the poor, tortured soul. Ludmilla had powerful gifts and was always accompanied by a magnificently beautiful fairy named Diamond. Moses had been attending the fire since the late 1800s. Molly and the other gifted ones were the only humans who could see the smoke. This was the first winter Molly lived in the house, so no one who lived nearby had any inkling that Moses still lived in the ruins. He was surprised when the car parked close to his cabin. A beautiful woman with a fairy on her shoulder stepped out of the car, along with Molly, Mary, and Molly's grandmother, Joanna. They walked over to the cabin. "There's the fishbowl Moses used as a head," Molly said. Ludmilla walked over to the wood stove, and she put her hands out to warm them. "Moses, we're here to talk to you," Molly called. A misty form of a sad boy appeared. "Hello, Molly. I'm keeping the fire going. I'm here alone, but I'll keep the house warm this time." "Moses, my name is Ludmilla. I'm Molly's grandma's sister. We're here to help you over to the other side, to be with your mom and dad and your little sister." "I can't leave. I have to keep the fire going." "You did not cause the deaths of your family. You were such a young boy. Your mother and father loved you more than their own lives, and they would only want you to have peace," Ludmilla said. "I have to get more wood for the fire," Moses said as he walked to the woodpile. You say his parents are buried around here?" Ludmilla asked Molly. "Yes, in Campbell's cemetery over there." Molly pointed in the direction of the cemetery. "Diamond, will you please go see if his mother or father are waiting for him?" "I'll find them if I can," Diamond said as she flew off. "But we'll wait here a bit. Diamond should be back soon. Warm yourselves by the fire." After a couple of minutes, Moses said, "I never let the fire go out when it's cold outside. I have to keep the cabin warm." Diamond in a misty form appeared. "No, you don't, Moses, my love." And a soothing lady's voice came from behind Ludmilla. The misty form of a woman walked over to Moses. "We've been waiting for you for such a long time." "I let Daddy freeze. It was my fault." "No, it wasn't your fault. We love you, and we want you with us." Moses cried and hugged his mother. "They're waiting for us, Moses," his mother said. Moses looked at Molly, Ludmilla, and Grandma and waved goodbye. He hugged his mother, and they disappeared. "Thank you for finding her, Diamond. No more watching the fire." "He's at peace now," Ludmilla said. "The fire's out," Molly said, with tears in her eyes. Molly and Mary hugged each other, and then they hugged Ludmilla and Grandma. So the sweet 10-year-old boy who blamed himself for his father's death was finally at peace with his family on the other side. The character of Moses is from the Molly O'Neill trilogy, books 2 and 3. If you want to read more about Moses and Molly, the links are below. Thanks for listening.